Hello, everybody. Welcome to the eDOCS Upgrade You Need Before 2019 webinar. Our presenter today is Joshua Wertheim, President of Wertheim Global Solutions. This webinar will last approximately 1 hour. It will be recorded and made available on our website shortly afterwards. We welcome your questions, and if you have any, you can enter them into the appropriate location on the GoToWebinar control panel, and we will answer all of them at the end. Josh, you may begin.
Thank you, Melissa. I appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon where you are. My name is Josh Wertheim, and I am president of Wertheim Global Solutions. We have been an eDOCS integrator slash software developer since the very, very beginning. And I want to thank you all for attending. I thought I'd start by just giving you a little bit of history so you know who you're talking to. I was the first integrator for a product that was the original predecessor for eDOCS called eDOCS Classic over 25 years ago, and have been working with the company that developed that product called eDOCS, followed by the company that acquired them, Hummingbird, and followed then by the company that acquired Hummingbird, OpenText, for the entire time since the beginning. We have been developing add-on solutions for their products for over 20 years, and I'm going to be explaining to you today what some of them do and how some of them work, and hopefully you'll get a feel for why you need them, because for our clients that use them, they have become indispensable parts of the overall suite of things they need to keep OpenText products, the eDOCS product line in particular, running as smoothly as possible. So let me start by discussing the kinds of things you spend your DM budget on. Obviously, you spend your budget on things like enhancing the capabilities and integrations and adding new applications and supporting those applications. Occasionally, you may do an upgrade. Obviously, you spend money on licensing and maintenance for the products themselves, for training, for the infrastructure to support the eDOCS environment. And then at the bottom, I have listed management and support. And the reason I mention those is because when you look at the cost of support, this is one thing that we can directly address and assist with through the use of our additional add-on utilities. So how do you keep your clients and the support people as cost effective and happy as possible? By hiring great people and giving them great tools to do their job, to make them more productive, to make them less frustrated, to keep them happy and well fed. So why Wing Tools? No matter the size of your organization, there are things that you need to have in order to maintain and support your libraries and the systems that run under those libraries and the users that use those systems. Doesn't matter whether you're a sole practitioner, and we happen to have one client using our software that is a sole practitioner attorney, or if you're a multi-location environment with 50+ locations where your eDOCS environment connects to each other to provide lots of functionality across the entire enterprise. The larger your organization is, and the more dispersed it is, the more difficult it is to maintain your environment. But if you need to be able to do things like cross-library searching for documents or collaborating amongst people in multiple offices, that becomes critical to make sure that everything works as smoothly as possible. So over the past 20+ years, as I mentioned, we have come up with a lot of additional functions that are necessary to provide that support. The problem for a lot of people who use eDOCS that don't have these add-on tools is that they tend to have to do things like write SQL scripts, which obviously, if you think about it, may have to be changed as you upgrade from one version of eDOCS to another, or if you upgrade from one version of SQL to another. And if you use a partner, and this is no offense to partners, but if you use a partner or an integrator to maintain and develop those items, they charge you typically by the hour to develop, update, test, etc. If you have an environment where you have turnover, every time you have somebody leave and another person come in, you have to spend time and effort to retrain that person and get them up to speed, especially when you have a need for something that may be one-off, like a specific kind of report that somebody in management asks for. So a lot of times a function is required right now. A partner comes and says, I need a report of who's been accessing documents for this particular matter, to see if maybe somebody has been breaching some kind of fiduciary responsibility of the firm. So most of our clients, all of our clients that use Wing Tools, look first for that kind of capability to see if it's there. And 9 times out of 10 it is. And I'll give you an example when we get to the demo. The thing about Wing Tools is it's over 120 different functions all rolled into one interface. So you could get a report or write a report in SQL that gives you one of these things, and then another report in SQL or another software developed to give you another report or another function. Or you can get Wing Tools, and you get them all if you use Wing Tools for those kinds of functions. The Wing Tools product is the core of a suite of add-ons that we have developed over the years for eDOCS. So what we refer to as library maintenance on steroids is the Wing Tools itself. But if you have a multi-library environment where you need to keep your metadata in sync, so you want to have the same list of clients, the same list of matters if you're a law firm, the same list of users and groups and group memberships and document types and all the other things that you use in your system, WingSync would provide that capability. Wing Archive is a multi-purpose document replication application. We have clients that use it for things like archiving. We have another client, we actually have more than one other client that uses Wing Archive to create a backup library, because it replicates documents and folders and emails and even now workspaces whenever something is changed or added in a library. So it can create an entire backup solution for you with WingSync to provide you with that in case your production system goes down. You have a backup system to cut over to. Our ethical wall or Chinese wall solution is called WinkWall. I'll give you a brief demonstration of that as we go through this process. And then we have a product called DMS Sync that provides you with synchronization of users and group memberships from your Active Directory network into your eDOCS environment and maintains that. So instead of having to add a user in Active Directory or change a group membership in Active Directory and then go replicate that in eDOCS, DMS Sync can sense when those things are added or changed and make the change right into your eDOCS system for you, eliminating a step that could produce errors and omissions and make your system not run optimally. So when I say Wing Tools is library maintenance on steroids, what I mean is that it's got some functions in it that provide you with just general housekeeping capabilities. It gives you the ability to do a lot of proactive work to avoid having to later on troubleshoot issues. Helps you to prevent a lot of issues from occurring if you use it and run some of the functions that are built into it, or support for your users in case something happens and they have issues that you need to resolve. It's got some auditing tools which help you reduce the risk associated with using an eDOCS system, especially when it comes to security. It gives you the ability to support projects that you may be performing or may be asked to do in your environment, and environmental control to make sure your system is running optimally, and then just some general maintenance and management tools and reports that we provide with Wing Tools. Another way we refer to Wing Tools is as the Swiss Army knife for your eDOCS environment. This is just an incredibly short list of some of the things that Wing Tools does. I'm not going to go through this list here, but let's take a look at Wing Tools. This is the main screen of Wing Tools. And then, what happened? Hang on one sec. There are functions in Wing Tools that provide you with all sorts of things. So as I scroll through this, you'll see this is a list of some of the menu options of things that you can do with Wing Tools. Now, obviously, in 1 hour, I won't be able to show you all of these. I'll try to hit on some of the highlights of the things that Wing Tools does. And this is not even a complete list. We have actually, since we did these screenshots a few months ago, added even more functions into Wing Tools. We tend to add things on a monthly basis. So if you obtain Wing Tools and then you're on maintenance, you get all the updates as part of maintenance. And if there's a function that you need and you ask for, and it's something that we think could be useful for other clients as well, we'll add it in as part of your maintenance. So if you need a specific kind of report, we add it in. In fact, over the last several years, pretty much everything we've added into Wing Tools has been based upon customer requests, things they've asked for that it didn't do. We threw it in, made it available to everybody, and that just keeps the product as vibrant as it possibly can be. One of the other things that I should mention is Wing Tools supports the updates that OpenText comes out with for eDOCS. So if you're on 5.3.1 and then you go to 10 or 16, you can continue to use Wing Tools. It works with all the current versions as well as backwards compatible to eDOCS 5.3.1. And it works with 16.4. It works with lookup security, which I'll explain as we go through the demo. It works with shared workspaces. So as OpenText enhances its system to provide you with additional functionality in eDOCS, we come out with a version of Wing Tools that will support that version and those new features as part of, again, as part of your maintenance. So I'm going to go through rapidly some use cases because I'm sure what you really want to do is see the demo. We have, and these are all based upon actual clients. So we have a client that needed to export documents based upon a list of client matters. So for them, we had the Wing Tools export documents from list function, where you produce an ASCII list of all of the clients and or client matters that you want, and it will export them into subdirectories that you tell it to with meaningful file names based upon all sorts of different criteria to provide them with what they needed. Another client, an investment bank, wanted to be able to move a user from their Switzerland office to their New York office. And so the documents were in the Swiss library, and they wanted everything moved over to the New York library. So we have a move user function that will take everything belonging to the user, including their folders and their workspaces, and either move the documents and information over, or transfer the documents and information over, or copy the documents and information over. You have choices in how you want to handle those sorts of things as well. The client, it's a government agency, needed to determine whether a user or any users may have been trying to access documents that they shouldn't have been trying to access. And in their particular case, documents were not properly secured in all cases, so they needed to know who may have actually touched the documents because they needed to do that for the regulations that they were under. So we have a report in Wing Tools called the Guardian Analysis Report. It was originally written to support our Guardian product, but then we enhanced it so you don't have to have Guardian to run it. So it compares what users are doing and identifies when a user may be exceeding his normal count for activities that he should or shouldn't be performing. And it does this in real time if you're running Guardian, whereas it goes backwards and scans through the documents and activity information if you're not using Guardian. We have a client that wanted to be able to transfer the documents from a user who left the firm to another user. They wanted to make that user the author and the typist, but in their particular case, they didn't want to remove the original user. They wanted the history to still stay of what that user had done prior to their leaving. We have a function called remove and reassign documents and rights that allows you to select another user to reassign all that user's documents to. and then you can optionally remove the original user. But in the meantime, wherever the first user that left the firm was identified as the author or typist or trustee, it transferred the rights and the authorship and typist information to the user who replaced that person. One of the other uses for this, and I think it might have been the first use, was we have a client that had a lot of temporary workers that were coming in, and so they had some temp users, and when the temp left, they wanted to transfer those documents to a real user, or perhaps they have somebody who's going through training and creates documents under a training ID, and then they wanted to transfer those documents to the real user after their training was completed. So there's all sorts of other kinds of uses besides the person leaving the firm for the remove and reassign documents and rights function. We have a client that originally started with way too many document types. So what they decided they wanted to do was, let's get rid of the ones or some of the ones that nobody has ever used. So we have a function in Wing Tools called cleanup. And in the case of document types, what it does is it gives you a list of any document type that's not been used. And you can remove those using Wing Tools. And if it's something that you want to not remove or remove, but it has some documents associated with it, in this case, document types, we have the ability to remove and reassign, which does similar to the what it does with people when they leave, or when you want to transfer documents. It will let you reassign documents from one document type for another, or one client or another, or one matter or another. It's not just limited to document types, and then optionally remove the original. This is an interesting one because I was noticing on the eDOCS forum the other day that somebody asked a question about missing and 0-byte files. And so how do you identify documents where the file is missing off the document server, or the file on the document server is missing, has 0 bytes? We have a report called the missing document report. We not only have the ability to report on what those missing documents and 0-byte document files are, but there's an optional component we provide with Wing Tools that allows you that would have Wing Tools search the shadow drive of any user who has touched the document in order, from the last person who touched it to the person before that, to see if it can find the document on somebody's shadow drive to restore it back to its original proper state. That's something that we provide with Wing Tools. We have, and this happened after 9/11. I know that's been many years ago, but it's still here. You needed to restore your database, but you didn't know that, but you weren't sure whether the database and the document server backup matched. How do you identify what may be on the document server but may not be profiled? We have a reverse scan from the missing and 0-byte file report called the missing document profile report, which scans every file with a valid extension that matches to an application on the document server and makes sure that it has a profile in eDOCS. And if it doesn't, from the list, you can actually bring the document back in and reprofile the document. So you can sync up a document server with a database that way. So that's just some examples of some of the things that Wing Tools can do and some use cases from our clients. I was mentioning the fact that we have clients that request things all the time. This came in at 12:25 today from one of our clients who was asking, we need to identify the file size of documents, and if this is something that's available with Wing Tools. And so I pointed them to a report in Wing Tools called the file size report, where you can run a file size report of documents based upon author, typist, primary group, application, by the age or by size threshold. And by size threshold, what I mean is you can run the report and say, show me documents that are larger than 50 megabytes. In some cases, some clients may experience indexing issues with very large document files. So the size threshold will help identify what documents may choke the indexer. And then you can, from the list, the report that's provided, there's an option to turn off full text indexing for that document or that spreadsheet or that PowerPoint or that engineering document, whatever it is. So that, again, this is one of the things that's there. It gives you the list, but it also lets you act upon documents if certain situations may occur. In some cases, the indexer may have issues with extremely large files. Anyway, that was just something that I thought would be interesting to show you as we go through the presentation, because it's based upon real life. A client had a need. They asked me if it's something that Wing Tools can do, and the answer was yes. Anyway, this is the main Wing Tools screen. You may recognize it from the PowerPoint we just ran. We have in our environment 3 different libraries: Coconut Creek, Guardian Test Library, and a Virginia library. And there are functions you can perform within the framework of a library. That was the menu I showed you a few seconds ago. And these functions include reports, and there are what we call library reports, and then there are other reports. And as you can see, there are numerous other kinds of reports. The Guardian Analysis Report, for instance, the Guardian Summarization Report, listings of documents, component listings, folder path reports, activity log analysis reports, where you can get analyses of what people are doing, and you can run a report, again, based upon all sorts of different criteria. Very, very powerful. And some of the ones you may see at the bottom are the ones that clients may have asked for, or probably did ask for. So a client said, I wanted to know who edited my docs for a specific user. So you pick the user from the list. You then go, it then goes and says, these are the people that have edited documents that belong to a particular user. The folder contents report would give you the information about what folders are owned by a specific user, either as an author or a typist or all members of a group, and what contents each of those folders has. Here's the missing document files report. And you can run it, if you don't want to run it for everything, you can run it for just a specific subset of criteria. The backward scan of the documents on the files on the document server to see what's profiled and what may not be. You can get a list of all the documents that are in use. This is another useful report if you want to find out what documents may be in use as far as eDOCS is concerned. And the nice thing about this is, let's say that a user has a problem accessing a document because eDOCS says it's not available, it's being edited, it's checked out, but you know it isn't. You can come in, run this report for a specific user, and then from the list, you have the ability to release the document. So if a user calls support and says, I can't get to document 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it says it's checked out, you come, but I know it's not because it says it's checked out to me. You can run the report for that user, find that document 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right mouse click on the results and say release, and the document then becomes available to the user. So this is just an enormous number of reports that we add in. And again, not to belabor it, but clients ask for stuff all the time, and that's what we throw in if they have a specific need that we think is useful for everybody. I'm going to skip down to the utilities menu. This is a lot of proactive things that you can do to make sure that your system is running properly. For instance, you can check launch methods to make sure that all launch methods are valid. Check for duplications in things like a system ID for people and groups, or a duplication of system IDs for clients and matters. These are not good things to have, by the way, but it's possible that based upon corruption, as system IDs are assigned, you could have a situation where there are duplicates and all sorts of problems occur. There was a client once that the system ID of a user became 0. And that happens to be the system ID for the eDOCS users group. And that's caused all sorts of issues for the user. And I think it might have even caused issues for the eDOCS users group. So that's why we threw that in to help make sure that those sorts of things don't happen. The check and reset next keys, which makes sure that the next system ID to be assigned as rows are being added in aren't already assigned to another item in another table, to eliminate the possibility of you having duplicate index errors when you try to insert a row. Checking checked out documents. Missing profile metadata. Does the profile, or do the profiles for point to correct information in the tables that they point to? So for instance, does the document type column in a profile point to a valid document type? Does the client, in this case matter, in the profile point to a valid matter in the matter table? And what it does is it gives you a list of any mismatches that it finds, things that may be missing based upon anything from corruption to whatever, and allows you to fix the problem right from within Wing Tools. We have a folder cleanup function that will allow you to make sure that all the folders are properly stored in the folder item table. A folder purge function. If your users are creating folders willy-nilly and they're not using them, what folder purge will do is it will allow you to go through the system, and any folder that was created more than X number of days ago that is empty, it can remove them. Verify application file extensions to make sure that the applications that are referenced by the extension of a document in the components table matches the an actual extension in the application or apps file extensions table. Again, all sorts of cleanup network aliases, mismatched profile reports, reorganize document files. We have clients that use SharePoint that want to change the file structure, the directory structure for their documents from something like author typist to something else like client matter. That's what reorganized document files will do. So then we also have, I'm going back towards the top, functions like moving a user from one library to another, copying, transferring, or moving documents from one library to another, all sorts of different ways you can pick to export documents. You have a couple of different ways of importing documents, including from local drive. And from local drive, if you take the time, if you have like a local drive and you want to, if you can set the directory structure to meaningful metadata, we can use that directory information actually to populate profiles. One of the more popular things in Wing Tools is the ability to secure documents based upon all sorts of different criteria. You can secure documents based upon who the author is, who the typist is. Now, when I say secure documents, what I mean is that you can either add or replace the security of documents from within Wing Tools. So let's say that you want to add me as a trustee for all the documents that belong to Melissa as the author. You can do that. Or you can have Wing Tools say, any document that's secured that Melissa is the author, set the security explicitly to this list. And it will do that. Not only will it do that, but if you pick a folder, it will automatically, if you tell it to, set that security to any content of the folder, including all the subfolders and their content below that folder. That's why this is so powerful, because it lets you set security in all sorts of different ways, and it makes it so easy. You'll wonder how you ever live without it. You can also set security from a list of documents, from security groups, by security user, meaning if the litigation group is in the security of a document, add deny rights to Melissa. Or a security user, or a typist group membership. And here's something else extremely valuable. Anything that Wing Tools does, we log in an audit table, which means what we do is we do before and after snapshots anytime we change security. And what that means is that anything we do, we can undo. So if you've made a mistake, you added Melissa and you say, wait a second, I didn't mean to add Melissa. You can go in and undo the change and say, undo every place I added Melissa with this rights. Remove duplicates is kind of like a cleanup. Make sure there's no duplicate entries in the security table. We also have a number of different ways to mark documents as read-only, but again, we do it with a twist. Because what we can do is, let's say that you want to mark all the documents for a matter that you have closed. You want to make all those documents read-only. If you pick the matter, what Wing Tools can do as an option is say, not only do I want to close the matter, but then I want to not only do I want to mark the documents read-only, but I also want to disable the matter when I'm done. And if you have a column in the matter table called closed, if it looks for a specifically worded column name called closed, we can mark it as closed as well. So if you use this to close your matters, as many of our law firm clients do, you can actually then set the matters closed value to closed, as well as optionally disable it, which by disabling it means you can't, it won't show up on lookups. Now, if you use Wink Archive, as I'll show you in a second, we can trigger copying documents from the production library to a archive library based upon this criteria. We can set it up so that you close the matter, you mark all its documents read-only, and transfer the documents or move the documents over to the archive library, all seamlessly, just by triggering the event right from here. We also, just like we have for make read-only, we also have the delete function, where you can delete documents based upon all these criteria, or included in there is the ability to delete documents that are marked for deletion. That is a better alternative, in my opinion, than using Storage Manager to do it, because it's cleaner, it's got lots less potential for errors, etc. Quickly, I'll go through, because we support Microsoft SQL as well as Oracle. If you're running on Microsoft SQL, you'll see a Microsoft SQL menu here, and you have all sorts of things you can do. One of the things that I like to do is compare database to dictionary. From a technical standpoint, it is not so terrible if you have a column in your SQL database for a table that doesn't exist in your eDOCS dictionary. That's totally harmless. However, it could be disastrous if you have a column in your dictionary that doesn't exist in your database. And so one of the first things I suggest to all our clients when they first get Wing Tools is run the compare database to dictionary, and make sure you don't have a situation where you have columns in the profile table, particularly the dictionary for the profile table, and they're not in the database. That will cause all sorts of problems. But there are other functions here as well. The cleanup data dictionary, just make sure that you don't have any duplicates there, which I've seen happen with older versions of Designer. List the data dictionary. You can create a group access trigger to retain what's called universal access. That's a little technical. I won't really get into that right now. Truncate spaces on candidate keys. If you have a ending space in some of the keys and some of the tables, the search becomes different than if it didn't have. So if a user searches for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they won't find potentially space 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that sort of thing. So we clean that stuff up here. Well, you're a SQL guy. You don't want to have to go to Management Studio in SQL to run a SQL statement. Well, you can run one right from here. What this is a list of all the SQL statements we have run when we launched Wing Tools. So you can actually see the SQL statements we run, and you can pick one, and results will show up right here. You can also run your own if you want. But what's really beautiful about this is the ability, if you have multiple libraries, to say, I want to run this, but I don't want to run it just on this library. I want to run it one time on all libraries. So let's just pick something simple. I spelled that wrong, so count by typing is terrible. And execute on all libraries. And there you go. There is the results. Tells you which library the result came from. I don't know any other way to do this. And this really is a time saver when you got multiple libraries. Even if you have two and there's something you need to do in SQL, why go to Management Studio, type it into one library, then connect to the next library to run it again, then connect to the next library to run it again. And then you have to combine the results from 3 separate queries into one report. Here it is for you automatically. My clients love that. Okay, I'll drill down to a few more things here. When you click on the plus sign next to the library, it gives you a list of all of the tables, color coordinated by what they are. And I hope the green is visible on your screen. But I'm going to go to one. I'll pick document types. And by the way, if you click the plus sign next to a table, it tells you the columns in the table. And if that table is linked to another table, it kind of tells you where that came from, etc. That's good for developers. Developers like that little add-on, that little piece, because, you know, how do I know how the target doc server column and the document types table relates to other tables? Or in the case of, let's say, the system ID, it's referenced by the document type column in the profile table and the type ID column in one of our tables called link missing. So you have the document types table and you want to list the contents. Very simple. Just drag it over and it'll list the contents. And that's nice. But let's say you have a table where you have foreign keys linked to the table. Like, for instance, the matter table. You scroll down to the matter table and scroll over, and you get not only, you don't get the system ID of the client here, you get the client ID. It automatically figures out that the table matter links to the table client, and the candidate key of the client table is the client ID, so you don't just run a select where you see system IDs that are potentially meaningless to you. And that's very useful as well. So that was list contents. You can run a query if you want to just find specific things. You can run query. It's got total Boolean logic here. I want to look for a specific type. I can do that. I can also set lookup security. This comes back to the feature lookup security in eDOCS 16. I think it started in 16.2 if I'm not mistaken, but I may be wrong. What lookup security is, for those of you who may not know, is the ability to establish a list of items in a table that are either visible or invisible to users and or groups. So like you have security for documents where you can say deny people access to this specific document based upon what you put into the security table. Here you can say deny access to this sensitive matter, I'll use matter as the example, if that user's ID, system ID actually, is in a table called lookup security. It's very valuable, it's very useful, but it is extremely difficult to set up and maintain. And the reason I say that is because of something in the design that I am not a fan of, but we help you with. And that is that when you turn on lookup security and turn it on for a specific table, by default, everybody is denied to every row in the table. So if you're not careful with how you set it up, you could have a system where users come in the morning, if you turn that on over the weekend, and nothing works. So there's a lot of prep work that has to go into making sure that your system works in order to use lookup security. So we try to make it easier for you. And one of the things we do is set lookup security. which means simply add an entry into the lookup security table for every document type for docs users, so that when you turn on lookup security, your document types are by default enabled to everybody, just like it had been in the past. And so when you're turning on lookup security, what you really, if you're going to turn it on, you want to go to every table here that the profile links to, and make sure that you enable lookup security or set lookup security. So when it first does that, it does an initialize basically, which says add every row. But if you run it iteratively, if you run it over again, maybe in a week or a day if you want to, it'll just find what hasn't already been set. So your new clients, your new matters, your new people, they'll be added, but it won't change anything that you put into the system. Because what is the ultimate value of lookup security if you then don't go in and say, okay, I want to deny this matter to this group or this user? So you have to go in to Management Studio for eDOCS and say, deny this user or this group from this particular matter. But we've done the homework for you automatically with the initializing here, so that every other one is visible to that person, but not that one particular one. Conversely, as I'll show you when we get to link wall, you can have it do the opposite. I only want this one user to be able to see this one matter or this list of matters. That person has come in from another law firm. If it's a law firm, you only want to give them the ability to see the matters that you want them to work on. You don't want them knowing all the other matters that the firm may be working on. All sorts of different reasons this may happen. You may have a contractor. You may be doing e-discovery, whatever. So you may have a situation where you only want one user to be able to see, or that user or list of users only to see the ones that you want them to see when they do a lookup or they work with documents. So we can support that with our link wall, as I'll show you in a sec. So that's lookup security. And the last piece of this is that link sync, if you have multiple libraries, you only have to initialize one library. Because what link sync can do is, if you tell it to, is synchronize the lookup security across all your other libraries. So that's now supported as well. So you don't have to go into every library and initialize every table every day. You can just go into the one library you choose, set lookup security, and link wall will then maintain it if you have it, in terms of denying and allowing users and groups specific things, and then link sync can replicate that to all your other libraries. Really simplifies the whole process if you use all three. You can copy the contents of a table to another library right from here. Now, what does copy do? What copy does is it looks for matches based upon the useful keys of a table. So what it'll do is it'll look for each person by their user ID. If it finds the user, it assumes you want to update any changes that have been made to that user. If it doesn't find the user ID, it'll do it'll generate a new system ID in that downstream library, and then do an insert, add that row in for the person. You want to know what's in one library that's not in another? We have a compare function, which will tell you the users that are in one library that are not in another. And then we have cleanup. Do you want to know what users are not, have done nothing in your system, and maybe try to get rid because you may not need them in the system if they don't do anything? That's what cleanup will do to the people table. The rest are auditing kind of things from a system standpoint. Compare table structure to Virginia, for instance, will make sure that all the columns in the people table in this library are also in Virginia. And that's important for synchronization, among other things. And it's extremely important for the profile table, that all the columns in the profile table are in each library, because otherwise it'll make it potentially difficult for you to do cross-library searching and collaboration, etc. All right, so now I've got rows here, and there's things I can do on the rows. I can copy this to another library. I can synchronize it to all libraries. I have an in-place editor here. This is where you can transfer documents to another matter. Let's say that and this is useful. Actually, this happened with a client last week. They wanted to move all the documents from one matter to another because they had incorrectly coded the profiles for them and wanted to put them into another matter. Audit security will show you any unsecured items, add a trustee, or replace one trustee with another. And here you can also close a specific item, which does the same thing as doing it on a library basis. We have different functions for different tables. So if I was to go to, for instance, I'm going to go to the profile table. Excuse me while I find it. So it'll take a second. So let me start to run it and then cancel. So I don't have to list everything. So here we have a document in the profile table. You can delete any attachments, display the profile. You can view the document. You can copy the document. You can find out information about the document. There's also, again, things you can do here. I'm going to go to, I think it was, did I do the people table? No, let me do the people table here. There's things you can do on people. You can edit the row, you can remove and reassign rights, you can set the trustees for the document, list the trustees for the document, transfer documents to another user, move the user, audit the security for documents that belong to the user, find out the group memberships, find out what documents they have rights to. Again, all sorts of different things. Now, I realize that I'm throwing a lot at you, but I want to make sure you get a feel for the depth and breadth of what this product can do. So there are also enterprise functions, dictionary differences, and all sorts of things like that. We have a purge activity log function, but we don't just remove the rows from the activity log. We will allow you to, what we do is we back up anything we change to a table that's independently useful, meaning where there is a system ID in the activity log table for like author, we put out the user ID in the backup table. Link act log back is what it's called. So you don't have to know how to link that backup table to the user, the people table, and the remote libraries table, and all the other tables. We will actually allow you can run a report on it as is, because it's useful information that's in the ACLOG back table. You can export documents across multiple libraries. So if you want to export all documents for a matter across that exists across the whole set of libraries you may have, you can do that, etc. We have a scheduler in WingTools. And so there are different kinds of things that you can schedule. So one of the things you could schedule here is data synchronization. Data synchronization would be replicate the, anything that's changed in the table since the last time you ran it out to the downstream libraries that you tell it to. We also have other things that you can schedule. You can schedule a database import. So for instance, if you do a database import in your DM using the eDOCS DM tool, we can take that import set and let you schedule it from within WingTools. So instead of having to go and hit the import or import all button every time you want to do a database import, we will schedule it for you right here. You can schedule an activity log purge. You can schedule an external application or a SQL statement. You can schedule those reports, a couple of those reports, one being the missing document files report. You may want to run that once a week to see if you've accumulated any missing or 0-byte files since the last time you ran it. And the missing document profiles report. The reason you can schedule these is if you have lots of documents, it'll take a very, very long time. Might run overnight to finish. Same thing with an activity log analysis report. Although it doesn't take a long time, we have clients that wanted to be able to run that report on a scheduled basis, coming in the morning and it's sitting there for them. We added the utilities menu. These are all the eDOCS utilities, only because it's so much easier to find them here than it is to go down here to programs, to OpenText, to DM server, to server admin tools. So we figured we just throw them in and give you the ability to run them right from here. just to make it easier, make your life easier. Now, if you have an environment where you're considering distributing wing tools out to your help desk people, we have security for wing tools. So what you can do is you can tell it what types of functions you want to allow a specific user or group to be able to run. So you may want to set up a group of people and all you want it to be able to do is run reports, or maybe run reports and our add-ons like WingSync and WingWall. And you can set up an environment where different groups can have different sets of rights to different functions within Wing Tools, so that you're not necessarily, if you don't want to give every function to every person you give Wing Tools to, you can just give them functions that you want them to be able to run. I'm going to cancel. I'm not going to change anything here. We have some tables of our own in Wing Tools, and because they are in the data dictionary, they become part of the eDOCS environment and are visible and workable from within the product. Okay, what I'd like to do now is I want to show you I want to show you WingWall and talk about how WingWall works. So WingWall is an ethical wall or Chinese wall product. And what it allows you to do is set security around any table, a value in any table that's linked to the profile table. So I can set, it's not just limited to clients and matters, although that's typically how it's used. I can set security on a document based upon who the author is. And I got one already set up as an example. So I have a rule here that says when Brent Reed is the author, because that's what people means, author. When Brent Reed is the author of a document, I want to allow the administrator group full rights, and I want to also allow the developers group full rights. But let's say that I wanted to set it up to deny a group. Let's say I wanted lawyers to be denied. So I say no access. And then what happens is anytime a document that's authored by Brent Reed is looked at by WingWall, which is basically anytime the document is changed, the profile changed, a new version is added, whenever, or security changes, it's going to look and see if there's a rule around that document. And when it finds there is, it will set the rights to match this. So a couple of things to explain. First of all, in this particular environment, I have some allows and some denies. That's going to be explicitly how the security is set. Plus, it's going to add author and typist with full rights, which is the default way that eDOCS works. But let's say that I set up a rule like this. I set up a rule that says anytime Brent Reed authors a document, I want to deny the lawyers group from this document. What we do is we see that the only trustee that's entered into the current trustees list is being denied. And we say, okay, this looks like an environment where I want to allow everybody else to have access to the documents and then deny the lawyers. That would be how WingWall will set the security. Similarly, let's say that I do this. If I say lawyers get full access, what will then happen is it'll say, okay, I want the lawyers to have full access, which means I don't want anybody else except the lawyers and author and typist to be able to see the documents, which means in effect, it's going to say docs users denied, lawyers allowed, Brent Reed is the author, and whoever the typist is allowed. We don't stop there though. We have what are called tokens. Now let's say, as in my previous example, by default, lawyers are granted full rights, and author and typist. But let's say that, well, I don't want to give the author full rights. What I do is I say, okay, we set up a token that says only give the author read-only. So you can actually override the default behavior of how security works in eDOCS, and it works, obviously, by saying the author only is going to get rights 63, which is read-only to the document. Now, it's a silly example now that I think of it because Brent Reed is the author, but let's say it's a matter rule, a rule around a matter. So let me turn that off, avoid a message here. Okay, so I got a rule around me, my personal matter in the system that says the developers are denied, Melissa's allowed, and then I add author. Well, in that case, if Melissa authored a document, it would say allow Melissa explicitly, but then she's the author and give her only read-only. What am I supposed to do? In that case, we go by default for the lesser rights. We are more restrictive. You can override that and change that in WinkWall, but by default, we go for the more restrictive rights whenever possible. So in that case, if Melissa was the author, it would give her the read-only rights because the token overrides is lower rights than her explicitly being granted rights. If you turn that off, then Melissa would get the higher rights. So it depends on how you configure the system to determine exactly what WinkWall is going to do. So you have some other options here. Do I want to append the trustees that are listed here to any existing rights that may be in place for a document, or do I want to override? If I say append or replace, if I say append versus replace, replace will just remove anything that a user may have done to a specific document and replace it with this specific list. If you say append, it'll leave anything a user may have done and just add these two trustees. And then the other option to talk about is allow parent merge. What allow parent merge does is it says, let's say I have a matter wall and then I have a client wall. Do I want to merge the client wall with the matter wall? If you say yes, it will. If you say no, then this will override anything that's at the client level. So that is the WinkWall admin screen. It's relatively simple. Hopefully you recognize the right 2/3 here. It's based upon how eDOCS itself works with security. And then of course we add on the left side, what library you want to work with, and then what specific piece of information within that library do you want to work with. So now we have the server side piece, which is the WinkWall itself. Here it is, and basically, if you want it to run all the time, there are some options you can set here, and just hit go, and it'll just start securing documents, if there are any. Let's see if there are. Nope, there aren't any. Okay, but if there were, it would have picked them up. And it just runs all day long, all night long, whatever you want it to do. Okay, let me show you WinkSync, and I know, Sherry, you're particularly interested here. And so the screen for the server-side piece looks very similar. You have the ability to tell it exactly what tables you want to synchronize by checking them, what libraries you want to synchronize to, what library you want to synchronize from, and then you have some options. So for instance, if you're synchronizing your people and your people groups, the first three or actually the first four all relate to that. If you're not, then they're not relevant. How do you want to set the primary library of the person when you transfer them or synchronize them to a downstream library? Do you want to make it that downstream library as their primary library in that library, or do you want to keep it always at the one that's specified in the source? Same thing with the doc servers. Do you want, when it hits a person, do you want it at that point to synchronize their memberships and their network aliases? And then, because the rules of WinkWall can also be synchronized to downstream libraries, so you don't have to set up one of these rules in every single library when you have them. It's just a matter of making sure that the table called link wall link is ticked. And then do you want to add the link wall link rules to any rules that may have been created in that downstream library, or do you want to replace whatever users admins have done with the rules in those downstream libraries to match what exists in this library, which in my case is Coconut Creek. So that is link sync. Again, relatively simple. Setup takes about 2 seconds. There it is. So you basically tell it what your source library is. This is the library from which to synchronize. What library do you want to synchronize to? What tables do you want to synchronize? Hit either the setup library if it's a first time installation, or the make triggers if it's the next time. Show you how fast it is. Are you sure you want to do this? And it's done. That's how long it takes to set it up. Once you're done with that, you're ready to go. Couldn't be easier. This was actually our first product that we developed, and we get 0 technical issues support calls for it over the last several years. By the way, one last thing to show you is the lookup security table. If you check that one, then any lookup security columns or additions and changes you make will be replicated out to the downstream library. Again, tying into how we can make life easier for you. Oh, and by the way, that's one other thing I didn't mention here is in this particular case, when we set security and you have lookup security enabled, we add an entry for the developers to be denied this matter. So it won't even show up in the lookup list for the matters for developers or any member of developers. That is the missing piece that I think I was mentioning before. How do you maintain who should be denied? And if you use link wall to maintain your rule set for security, we go down to hiding the row in the table in the lookup to that user or that group. So they don't even know it exists, or shouldn't know it exists. If somebody tells them, obviously, that's a problem. Okay, now just to kind of round everything out, and then we'll, oh my gosh, I've gone over. I just want to show you very quickly Link Archive, because again, it's the simplest thing in the world. You tell it where you want to synchronize documents to, where you want to synchronize them from, and then you got a bunch of options, including, do you want to keep the same document number? Do you want to do it as a copy, a transfer, remove? And you can use this for synchronizing anything, boilerplates, everything, you name it. And believe me, it's been used. Oh, we have a client that has oil rigs in the North Sea, and they use this for time of day transmission of documents from the home base and back and forth, because it's bidirectional between the oil rigs and the home base in Norway somewhere. So, I mean, that's another use for it. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up, and I think we'll take some questions if there are any. Melissa?
Yes, it looks like we have 2 questions from Diane Slonwhite. She has left and also requests that we do email her afterwards.
Okay.
Her first question is Link Tools a separate window from eDOCS, or is it like a tab in eDOCS?
It's a separate window. It's a separate application.
Okay, and are these tools something that end users would use, or would it just be the admin or IT person?
I would not recommend giving this to the end users. This is really for IT and admin.
Okay, and that's all the questions we have. If anyone wants to go ahead and quickly enter their questions now into the control panel, we'll give it a couple seconds. Okay. If you guys do have any questions, just email us. And thank you everyone for attending. Again, this webinar was recorded and it will be available shortly afterwards. We look forward to discussing Wing Tools with you in the near future.
Thank you, everybody.